I think this project is special in the way that it challenges the discourse around ancient history and archaeology, particularly in how our ancestors and their belongings and their villages are, not only spoken about, but how they're treated and how they're thought about, particularly by outsiders. Our community saw this project as an opportunity to tell our own history in our own way, to speak to our history and who we are as a community today, and ultimately that brings our history forward. It renders our history visible, and I think recognizes the fact that we have been living on the Fraser River Delta in what is now known as the Greater Vancouver area for thousands of years. So that when we came up with the title of the exhibit, the city, əsnaʔəm, the city before the city, that was to illustrate a point right off the bat that what is now Vancouver has always been home to our community, and we have always been a thriving society.
Traditionally, museums, and the Museum of Vancouver in this case, had represented Aboriginal communities. In this project, it was to provide the space and create relationship with the Musqueam so that they would represent themselves. At the same time, it was building new terms of engagement with not just Musqueam, but with other Aboriginal communities. So it really sets precedent in the way we're working with Aboriginal communities across Canada. When people think about the history of Vancouver, they think in terms of the incorporation, so 1880s. And what this exhibition is saying is there has been settlement for Aboriginal settlements for thousands of years. There's been people occupying the land in Vancouver for thousands of years. So I think people feel enriched by the experience, and they get to see Vancouver in a new light.
It's a very important project, I think, because it brings the Indigenous history of Vancouver out, makes it visible, brings it into the public realm in a way that's very powerful. And it's important to the city of Vancouver, but I think it also goes beyond that in terms of bringing Indigenous history to the forefront. So Indigenous history is Canadian history, and I think it's really important for people to engage with Indigenous history in Canada and to understand that these histories are important across the country and in other cities as well. So the project is really, it's been really important in terms of reframing the city as an Indigenous Aboriginal space. But I think it has a much farther reaching, a much more wide-reaching impact as well in terms of the way we think about the history of this larger place.
It's not about three people curating three different events in three different locations. It's about the entire community protecting and promoting their connection to their history. And I think it's been a wonderful experience for the community, the museum public, and the public at large. We're featuring aspects of our own history that we identify with very strongly, and we're sharing it with not only British Columbia but with Canada, and in terms of how our Aboriginal history in this country can be connected to the history of the 200, 300 years of settler history. That's a very important aspect, I think. Aboriginal communities, particularly in British Columbia, have been very proactive in protecting the village sites that are left, and many of them have been damaged or destroyed. And əsnaʔəm, the city before the city, actually is a demonstration of how a huge public outcry helped us to promote these displays because there was a protest to protect the site. And we've taken many of the belongings from that site and put them on display to try and inform people that it's not just about what's buried in the ground, it's about a living people.